Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL Podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly.
Well, welcome back to the DCL Podcast, your podcast to cruise a little smarter. I am your host, Lake, and I am once again joined by my co-host, Christy. Christy, how are we today?
I am well, Lake. How are you?
I am doing all right. Had a fun but rough travel weekend last weekend. Still trying to get back into a routine.
I think you need to tell people really quick what it is you did.
It was Disney related, not cruise line related by any means, but me and friends Ken and Sarah flew to Texas to play in a Lorcana tournament, which is like Disney's equivalent of like Pokemon cards, basically. It was pretty cool. There were 2,000 people there to play, like massive tournament. Neither of us made it very high, but we both played very well. And we had honestly an absolutely awesome time. Like we're talking about wanting to do it again.
Oh my God. Who puts on these tournaments?
The people that created Lorcana is Ravensburg, which if you've ever built a puzzle, they are probably the people that make that puzzle, but they also make board games and card games. And they obviously work with Disney to create the game, but then they work with another company that does like big tournaments to put on. So it is like essentially a like Disney Ravensburg sanctioned event.
Well, good for you. You know, I was thinking maybe we need like a podcast, Zoom, something meetup to teach people the game.
I have spent plenty of time teaching people how to play.
I know, you taught my son and my husband.
I did. It's fun.
I don't know
like
why
teaching.
I never was never around when any teaching was occurring and did not learn one thing about that game.
No, you did not actually.
No, it was not personal. But we're not here, as you would say, to talk about Lorcana, although that is pretty cool. What are we here to talk about today, Lake?
We are here to talk about cruising, but not necessarily Disney cruising. We are venturing outside, but this is still an exciting show because we are talking about a European sailing on Royal Caribbean, and it's also a special Royal Caribbean sailing, which we will let our guest today talk a little bit about. But with that, why don't we welcome Chad back to the show? Chad, how are you today?
I'm really good, Lake and Christy. I'll say, so Lorcana, I didn't know anything about this game till like 3 months ago. So I don't know how long this thing's been around, but apparently I have just been out of it because all of a sudden I keep hearing everybody talk about Lorcana and I know nothing about it. So I will take you up on that show or Zoom call or whatever it is to teach us all the magic of Lorcana.
Yeah, I think we have to make that happen.
It's only been out a year, which would be why you haven't heard about it. And the first 6 months, you could not find product. So it's really been out about 6 months.
Okay. All right.
But I'm
not too far behind.
Tournaments with 2,000 people, and Lake plays like and all over the place, even in Central Florida. So it's crazy.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a cool.
You start seeing gangs playing it in alleys now instead of dice.
There are like teams and stuff. Like it's pretty intense. Yeah, for real. Okay. They have sponsors and all of that stuff. It's like a real like a sport.
How are you going to get a sponsor? You need a sponsor.
Like your pixie dust could be a sponsor, right?
No.
Well, why don't we actually turn this towards cruising? Chad, why don't you tell us a little bit about the sailing that you booked, as well as why you went towards Royal Caribbean opposed to Disney?
Sure. Yeah. So a European cruise has been on our kind of family bucket list for a long time. My kids are now moving into the older teen space where they're going to be leaving the home here in a few years. And a Europe trip has been on our list for a while. Pandemic kind of pushed it back a little bit because we kind of got some things messed around. But, as we looked at kind of what we wanted to do, where we wanted to go, Disney number one was a lot more expensive. And it didn't necessarily have the itineraries that we were looking for at the time that we wanted to go either. So other cruise lines really offer more variety with those things. Interestingly, and we can get into this in a little bit, but the ship that we were on Oasis of the Seas on Royal Caribbean, and they actually do something that I wasn't really familiar with, but it's called interporting there. So you can either get on in Rome or in Barcelona, depending on so you had people, which you started noticing, like people had different color key cards to identify sort of like which cruise they were on. Were you on the 7-night out of Rome or were you on the 7-night out of Barcelona, because of kind of how they kept track of things?
Which works for Royal Caribbean because they don't have a traditional muster drill. They'll do the announcement before they take off, but it's back in.
They have the most wonderful e-muster You look at your phone before you even get to the port, and then all
You
you do
watch
is go
some
to your muster
videos.
drill. They check you in. Okay, good to go. And then on your way to enjoy your cruise. It is wonderful and boggles my mind why Disney won't go back.
I prefer the Royal Caribbean way. And I just had it this way when I was on the Utopia last week. So yeah, it's beautiful.
I think I meant to when I did my last cruise with Disney, which was in April, so just a few months ago. I was actually looking for a place on the comment card to make a comment about that. I couldn't even figure out like a place to put that. So it's almost like they don't want you to ask for that anymore.
Well, Disney doesn't want you to really give a comment anyway. Right. And we'll give you 2 lines to recognize one important person that you got on the cruise. So how did you come about picking this particular cruise?
Yeah, so this one, I think we were looking for something specifically that was going to go to places in Italy. That was kind of on our family bucket list of places to go. Barcelona seemed kind of the natural starting place for that, either where we could have gone out of the Rome place. But we were sailing with some friends. Actually, we met them on our very first Disney cruise back in 2016. This is now our 5th or 6th vacation with them now.
That's awesome.
Fabulous family. And become great friends over the years. And our kids at similar ages have sort of grown up together, going on these trips together. One of their daughters, her sort of place that she had always wanted to get to is Barcelona. So it just sort of fit that was the place that we would probably try to go out of. And then we kind of also, because, if you're going to go to Europe, we kind of went for about 2.5 weeks. We spent about 10 days on land. Prior to that, we flew. Our family is in the Milwaukee area, but the closest big airport to us would be Chicago O'Hare. So we flew United from O'Hare to Heathrow, spent 3 nights in London, kind of touring some things. Got a chance to see Westminster Abbey for a fabulous behind the scenes kind of tour.
Who did you book those tours through?
So those we just booked ourselves through the direct websites. So I know a lot of folks will use like the Viators and stuff like that. I kind of like doing the research myself on things and not being but so you start getting on their website and you sort of see what's available. Now, what I'll say is it requires you to know when do tickets come available, at what time. Like there were some of these things that I booked, and I did the similar things in Rome, where the Colosseum comes online, but literally you have to be on, I think it's 60 days, and then it's to the hour. So I wound up being on at like 3:00 in the morning to be able to get my tickets for 10 a.m. or whatever it was that day, 60 days out. So it's nuts. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for people, but that's what we wound up doing, was just kind of booking direct through all of the places that we visited. Similarly for the Harry Potter stuff, so we went to the Harry Potter studios where they filmed all the movies. Those that was actually probably the first thing that we booked for all of these, besides the cruise, obviously, because those started booking up super fast once they went. So we wound up getting a time that was like mid-afternoon by the time we could even get in. So we actually structured our London days around that, because that was the only time that we could wind up getting it. So it was nuts for competition on some of these ticketing sites.
What did you think of the Harry Potter tour? Studios.
Really, really cool. Yeah, it was. I think when we first booked it, my wife was wondering, well, then we've already seen all this stuff in Orlando. And I'm like, well, this is like actually where they filmed it. This is so we get to see the real stuff instead of the stuff that Universal made. But what I'll say is it makes me even more impressed with the Universal parks, considering how much it looks like all the things that were actually done in the movies. There were some things that we didn't see that I was kind of surprised by, like things like Hogsmeade, and none of those sets and stuff were there. They were running kind of like a dark arts kind of special expedition. So they had some certain things from Prisoner of Azkaban it was a Return to Azkaban theme. So they had like a lot of Azkaban stuff that was there. So it seems like they kind of rotate through some of the exhibits, but it's a good 3.5 hours to get through there.
What age do you think is good for that tour?
I'd say my kids started getting into Harry Potter probably when they were 9, 10. I think you could easily take kids that are that age through there and keep their interest. There's some really cool props. There's some like back behind the scenes stuff of like, how do they go through and make all the creature masks? And, they show you the mock-ups, like you finish with this amazing detailed, what's the word I'm looking for, model, I guess, of Hogwarts that they would use for the camera shots on the outside and stuff like that. But it's lit up in just an amazing way. You kind of start like actually in the dining hall, or whatever, the Great Hall, or whatever they call that. But it's really good. There's some really, really cool behind the scenes stuff that I enjoyed a lot more than I thought it would.
Do you have anything else notable from London that you did?
Tower of London was really awesome. We got a ton of souvenir shopping around there. I'll say we used public transportation everywhere we went, so the tube was super easy to use. If you've been in a major metropolitan area, like I used to live in Chicago, trying to use the L and stuff like that, it's the same. It's the same moving in and out and stuff like that. But Westminster Abbey, I think, was a place that we wish we'd have had a chance to spend a little bit more time than we did, but we had to get out to get to the Harry Potter stuff. And we did that really cool behind the scenes tour, but that didn't allow us a lot of time to see the regular stuff in Westminster Abbey. So in hindsight, and I think this will be a common theme for our stuff in Rome, some of these things you want to give a full day to. And if you really had the time to do it, you would try to give a full day to these things and then chill out, because we ran ourselves ragged in London trying to walk around and catching trains and stuff like that. And at that point, we were all still super jet lagged too, so it wasn't great in that regard.
Yeah, a lot of these trips can be less relaxing than we imagine them being.
Yeah,
if you are trying to pack quite a lot in. Well, after London, where did we head next?
So from there, we headed actually up to Finland. So my wife is of Finnish descent, and so we always had on our list to try and get to Finland. I'm half Polish, and I got a chance to go to Poland years ago for work. So this was her chance to get to Europe and see some of her heritage. We actually, so we were in Helsinki for a night, and then actually went and took the train about 4 hours north to go meet with some of her family for a night, which we had a fabulous time. Interestingly, so all of her relatives kind of settled in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And if you get to like where her family was at in the middle of Finland, it looks like that, like birch trees growing with pine trees. And you can see why the Finns, when they came over from the old country, settled there, because they're like, oh, this looks like home, lakes and everything else. It just reminded me so much of Upper Michigan. It was remarkable. But we had a great time. It was much more, I would say, of the parts of our trip, that was probably the most relaxing part of it, because Helsinki is not nearly the packed city that you get when you're in London or Barcelona. Super walkable. Everything was really close to where our hotel was, or we could catch a quick Uber over. So it was really great. So we were kind of on the seaside. We got to go take like a sauna over in the public sauna and stuff like that, and really had a great time there. And then from there, went on to Barcelona for a night prior to our cruise. So we kind of flew in. We needed to do laundry. So I found a place that was like just a couple blocks away from our place to do some laundry, because I hear it's top 10 things to do in Barcelona is your laundry. And then we went to Sagrada Familia for the day. So it was fabulous. It just breathtakingly gorgeous to see the inside of that. The way that the Gaudi juxtaposed kind of this gorgeous stained glass versus the very blank interior, where it's the color contrast is just incredible, and the details. And so we had a guided tour there, some things in there that you could never pick out if you just sort of like walked in there yourself to try and take in. But just a breathtakingly gorgeous cathedral.
One thing we haven't talked about was how old your kids are for this trip.
So my daughter is 17, so she's going into her senior year in high school, and my son just turned 16, going into his junior year of high school. Easy to maneuver. Sometimes they have minds of their own at those ages, so you gotta. And I'll say that my family, and I think I've said this before on the podcast, doesn't do great with overscheduling. It's hard to do on these Europe cruises, especially when
That's true.
You've got very little time to pack in a lot of things to see. So I tried to like mix things that I thought that the kids would care about with the things that they didn't care about. So that's why we did, sort of Westminster Abbey in the morning, but then they get Harry Potter in the afternoon. So try to do a little bit of this and that, and try to schedule downtime kind of when we can. And I'll say that once we started getting into the cruise towards the back half, and I'll mention this like on our day in Mallorca, and even when we were in La Spezia for Pisa and stuff like that, the kids they were starting to get worn out, and they just needed a break, especially knowing the days that we had coming up.
I can see that. So one more question on this pre-cruise stuff. Barcelona is a tricky city, in my opinion, for hotel rooms that sleep more than two. How did you manage that with your family, and where did you stay?
A lot of searching. Trying to find a hotel room that we could all stay in was super challenging, especially if you were trying to stick within a certain budget.
Right.
We found a 3-star hotel that was, I don't know, like 200 something euros a night. It wasn't terrible, called Hotel Suizo that had I can't remember if they called it quad rooms or family rooms or something like that, where all of us, like they literally were 4 beds, there were 2 that were sort of like single beds apart and then like 2 twins that were kind of together.
That's another problem you have because you have older teenage kids.
Right. So we deal with this when we cruise.
Oh.
Royal Caribbean is nearly impossible for us all to sleep in one room because they have one bed that's a pullout for the couch bed, right? Disney's different. We can totally do Disney because we haven't done it with them in a while because we haven't actually cruised on Disney with the kids now since 19, I think it is. So it's been several years. I don't know that we can get any of them up in the bunk bed anymore, but we could book like a 4A or something like that and have the 2 beds that kind of come down, not so bad, and have separate sleeping surfaces. So we need 3 distinct sleeping surfaces at any given time. Finding a hotel room in Barcelona, to your point, was difficult. And you literally I spent hours, days, like looking through every hotel listing, finding hotels because we wanted to be in the Gothic district, close walking distance to all the things, right? And it was trying to find one was really honestly like a needle in the haystack. I think I found 2. I don't recall what the other one was, but we settled on the Hotel Suizo.
Where did you stay in London then, really quick, before we move on from there?
That one we did a VRBO.
Oh, okay.
So that was, we had found like a VRBO out in Chelsea that was, easy access to the tube to basically get into central London, stuff like that. But that was hard too, like, because it was, and I'll say we saved a ton of money doing that because I think even the VRBO that we found in Chelsea, which again had like my son was out on the pullout or something in the living room. There was 2 bedrooms, like one with a single bed and then one with a double bed. That was tricky to try and find a hotel room that was like that. And frankly, the VRBO was way cheaper.
When I was on the Utopia, when there's these press and travel trade cruises, they'll have a meeting with the upper royal management and all of the travel partners. And one of the guests asked, why aren't there more pull down beds? He didn't really say it, but they're expensive and they are hard to make the bunk bed. Logistically, those are reasons that Royal isn't interested in that. And those cabins are smaller. That's too.
Exactly what I was going to say, because those cabins in Royal are significantly smaller than what we get when we're in Disney, and it's noticeable, right? Even as we try to sneak past the bed and stuff like that. So it works for us on Royal to do the 2 the 2 cabins next to each other. This time around, last time we did it, we couldn't get the connecting the connecting door between them, but they opened up our balcony for us, and then we were able to connect that way. So they seem to be pretty accommodating about that. This time around, we actually had the door in the middle that was able to kind of go between us. And I'll say, like, we booked, while it wound up being a special cruise, like I said, we booked this thing 18 months or something in advance of the cruise, and then it wasn't named a special cruise until last summer. And then all of a sudden, like, the whole thing blew up as far as cost and everything else. And by that point, we were sort of committed to this trip and stuff anyway. We're like, well, we're going. So
well, and your cost was already set in stone.
Yeah, so. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think that it works for us for Royal that we need to sort of be in those 2 cabins because of the sleeping surfaces with our kids.
Yeah, and then Royal will allow you to split the main bed into 2, and so then the kids can each have their own like twin bed to sleep. Really quick for the listeners, if you are looking at a Royal Caribbean cruise, I would definitely reach out to a travel agent because a lot of times we are part of consortiums that block group space. And most of the time, if you are booking doubles, the group space is cheaper than any advertised price with Royal Caribbean. Our group space, and we have groups like on most Royal Caribbean cruises, doubles are going to be cheaper than the prevailing rates, but it only works for doubles or singles. Sadly, you cannot book a quad into that pricing, which is always unfortunate. Now it's time to board the ship. How was boarding?
Boarding was really, really easy. So we wound up actually getting a little bit later boarding time than our friends. For whatever reason, like the day that online check-in went in, I couldn't get to it on time. Who knows? I can't remember. But they were checked in about 30 minutes before we were. When I went and did our final check-in or whatever for health questionnaire and stuff like that, it was like, hey, you now have Express Pass or whatever they called it. And I'm like, I don't know what that means, but okay. So we just wound up leaving the hotel and just went to go check in, and they didn't bother to check our boarding time or anything. So we just kind of like walked straight. So we were on the ship probably 30 minutes before we wanted to, but it was super, super easy. Literally, you show up, you drop your bags like you do every other cruise. Not a lot of waiting through lines or for check-in or anything. Like we kind of breezed in. They had an iPad there that checked us against our pictures, passports, and then we were on our way. And it was literally on the ship within, I bet you we were probably curbed to having a drink in my hand in probably under 30 minutes.
This can be one of the benefits of having these multi-entry cruises is not everyone is trying to get on the ship the same day. And in most cases, most people are actually off the ship on that day because they're out enjoying their port excursions while you're going through your embarkation process.
Spot on. Like we got up to the pool deck and we're literally wondering, where is everybody? And I mean, this is probably, by the time we got on the ship, it's probably 11:30, something like that. And like, we're looking around and like, there's nobody there. And it occurred to us later in the week, I was like, people were doing excursions in Barcelona. They were at the cathedral.
Yeah, so definitely a cool benefit to the multi-embarkation cruises, which are much more common in Europe and on European lines as well. I believe MSC actually does them in the US, which is kind of interesting. But that's the only one that you'll find here doing them. We talked a little bit about the room. You had a veranda style room. Anything special about that?
We were on a bump out. So because we had booked early enough, we had nice big balconies. There was one that was kind of angled. I made sure the kids had that one so that, we had the bigger balcony. Because if I'm paying for it, I'm going to get the bigger of the two. The kids noticed that too. It was good for
Nice.
them to realize their place in the pecking order. But no, nothing spectacular about it. It's like Christy mentioned, it's really like two twins kind of pushed together. Not nearly as comfortable as Disney beds, frankly.
We danced around this a few times, and you mentioned that you were on a special cruise, but we haven't talked about what the special cruise was. So what was this special, or what was special about this cruise?
Yeah, so this, as I mentioned, we booked this like back in this November, I think, of 2022 for this cruise in June of 2024. But in June of 2023, they named this cruise the Royal Caribbean President's Cruise, which at the time I knew nothing about and had to go learn what the President's Cruise even was, but it sounded great. But really what it comes down to is like once a year, the company basically picks a cruise to basically host a bunch of special events, and top executives of the company, including Michael Bailey, sail with you. There's special entertainment, there's special parties, there's special like excursions that they do. There's special like takeovers of like ports and stuff like that, where they basically have all these things. So I've got the cruise compass here that it's a printout, Christy. It's like a real printout with pages.
I love a printout.
So some of the things that they've got, here you're a week ahead, right? So they have special like drink parties. Like they were hosted by Campari and Aperol. So like an Aperol Spritz pool party, a red by Campari. They had the Royal Day in Lerici, where they basically take over like the seaside town of Lerici and do all these special events and entertainment and stuff like that. They had like special celebrity chefs that were on like cooking stuff and like cooking competitions and whatnot. They had like special days where it was like Royal Goes Retro, and they had like all these retro games that they used to do back then and things like that. And then with that also comes like special, they announce, they do special meet and greets with Michael Bailey. There's some of these things are really more for status. So they had like a Moet Chandon Pinnacle party kind of thing for some of the top cruisers of their loyalty program. The big thing is they always have a celebrity entertainer. And this time around, it was Culture Club. So for those that are familiar with Boy George, Culture Club, he'll tumble for you. Really, really fun time. And we at the time, we weren't sure how it was going to work because, we've been on one royal cruise prior to this. Weren't sure how status was going to go and whether we'd get a chance to go. We did, but I'll say it was not without some drama kind of as far as how the ticketing and stuff went. You had to have like a special little wristband to be able to get in that lights up all fancy like. And
where did they have the concert?
In the Royal Theater, so the main theater.
Okay.
So, but they had two performances. They had one on the day that we left Naples, so the day 6, and they had another one on day 7. We were invited to day 7 for gold, for all us plebeian gold folks. And then my kids somehow got invited to the night before with all the pinnacles. And then our friends that we were sailing with, like their 2 kids got different nights. And then the husband and wife, like one of them got the night with us, one of them got waitlisted. And it was just bizarro land. And they've been on more royal cruises than we have. So like, how did we get invited? But they didn't. They told us they were going to be checking your little wristband against your invitation. And they didn't do any of that. As long as you had the orange wristband, you could walk right in. And I'll say that not everybody showed up either, because there were empty seats that were still in it. Now it's your last night of the cruise.
Right.
And I think some people like my kids that got invitations were not interested in going to see Culture Club. That's just not their jam. But I'll say Boy George sounds great. We had a great time there, and yeah, it was amazing. But they also had, so I mentioned the events, they also gave out like special gifts. So we got like these cool little wine tumblers and fanny packs, or whatever they call these crossbody things now, and stuff that all the kids wear these days. I'm sure it's not quite as cool as Lululemon, but it says President's Cruise on it.
It was included.
It was included. I didn't pay a dime for it. Well, I did. I paid a lot of dimes for it.
I was on a webinar yesterday with Regent Cruises, Regent 7 Seas, or whatever they're called, that luxury cruise line. And he made a point of saying that they're changing their branding and their wording to say the items are included. And I'm like, yes, people are learning, because it's not free. You've paid for it, but it's part of what you've paid for. It's included.
You get royalties whenever somebody uses that word?
I know. I think does the whole, it's like tick now. Everybody's going to hear free and you're going to think included. And so, exactly. When I was on this webinar, I wanted to say, I coined that it's not free, it's included. But, I didn't interrupt the webinar to tell them that. Okay. So one more fun fact while we're not talking about any, like we haven't gotten to the ports, which is what we're going to do next. Our singer on the Utopia was Meghan Trainor, and Meghan Trainor sang in the Aqua Theater, and you also had to have wristbands, but we didn't have a wristband. But when we were like in our cabin, we could hear her, and I was like, we need to get closer. We want to listen to Meghan. We did try to ask somebody who had a boardwalk room if they would just let us like go on their balcony and listen. And the one lady was like, yes, but then her roommate was sleeping or whatever. So that didn't work. So we went to deck 5. So if any listener is listening and you ever have an opportunity to see a show that maybe you don't have tickets for, you go to the running track and there is a staircase. So you go to the aft of the ship and there is a staircase that goes up to the Aqua Theater, and there's nobody guarding that gate. There's nobody like telling you not to walk up the stairs. So while in the boardwalk area, which is in the aft of the ship, they wanted wristbands and they wanted names, but nobody checked the staircase. And so we walked up to it and walked up the stairs and went to the concert.
I don't know if it's the same, and they may have changed some of the architecture between Oasis, obviously, all the way to Utopia. But we found a place that was kind of back by the barbecue place and the taco place, where it sort of like crosses the ship, and then there's like, you can basically see straight. You're basically looking straight down the boardwalk. You could almost like watch the Aqua Theater show from there too.
Oh, so, like way up by where the sports deck is or whatever.
Yep.
Ooh,
so
that's a really good tip.
Cool vantage point. Yeah. So like I was up there, I was like, we should sit here and like watch Aqua 80s from up here sometime, because their Aqua Theater show is awesome. I'm sure they all are, but we've seen the Aqua 80s now twice on Oasis, because like I said, this is our second time on the ship, or I can't remember if I mentioned that, but it's so fun.
It is the best show at sea anywhere like that I've experienced.
So before we get into the ports, I do want to talk about the Oasis just a little bit. Now, we could spend shows and shows talking about the things you can do on an Oasis class ship, because the answer is everything. Why don't you give us just like a couple highlights of what you and your family enjoy about the Oasis of the Seas?
Yeah, I think we liked it better, I think, the second time than we did the first time even. So I think, and again, maybe it's just you're familiar with it and you kind of know what you like to do, and it doesn't feel as foreign because it's a big ship, right? It takes, the first time that we were on it, it took a few days to kind of catch our bearings, which is actually one of the things that appealed to us about sailing on Oasis again, because we're going to have all this hustle of going through ports in Europe and stuff like that without having to learn a ship all over again was actually really beneficial for us, because it's just like one less thing you need to kind of be like, well, where do I go and how do I do this? So we at least understood kind of the ship and what we like to do and what we didn't. I think for our kids, they like just being able to roam and having a lot of different things to do, whether it's the laser tag or whether it's the whatever else to do. I think there's a lot of things to be for people to do depending on what your mood is.
Did they do some of those activities?
We did laser tag with them. They did trivia. They didn't do any rock climbing this time. We didn't do any ice skating this time, but that's all available for you.
And it's all included. So, I think, in my opinion, NCL, it's not even my opinion, NCL does have more charged for events, and Royal Caribbean really has a significant amount of extra activities on the ship that is included.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of that isn't is like the escape room, right? So you do
Yes.
pay for that. We didn't do that this time. We did that last time, and it's fun, right? But we just didn't feel the need to do it again since we'd done it the last time. There's zip lining, there's rock climbing, there's all kinds of stuff that you can do. And to your point, there's no extra charge for it. The obviously what do they call those the surf simulators, stuff like that.
The flow
Wave
rider.
Those are all included. The flow riders, yeah, those are all included. I swore I was going to do that this time because I've still never done it. Maybe next time.
Well, why don't we turn towards the real reason that we book any sailing in Europe, the ports? Obviously, most of these itineraries are going to be very port intensive, lots of going on, lots of tours and sightseeing to do. So let's go ahead and get into it with your first stop in Palma, Mallorca.
Palma de Mallorca. So we'd actually originally booked a kind of like a tour of like the city of Palma or something like that. They were going to take us around and kind of see some of the highlights. And our friends were still trying to figure out what they wanted to do. We actually wound up canceling that and settling on we were just going to get a hop on, hop off bus tour instead. Getting off the ship, we had to figure out how then are we going to get over there. We actually thought that we were going to be able to walk to the very first bus because we thought we were in a different place than we actually were. And they're like, no, you need to go and either take the bus over here to get to there, or you can take a taxi. And it's, the bus is cash only, and I didn't have any cash on me, and then wasn't planning to go and do that. So we actually wound up taking a taxi. The taxi wound up being cheaper. So it was way better for us to take the taxi to where we wanted to get to whatever that stop was. So we wound up taking it over to the cathedral over there. This is like we've seen more cathedrals on this trip than we've seen in our entire lifetimes, but my kids are totally cathedraled out after this trip. But breathtaking cathedral there on Mallorca. And then we were planning to go and hop on because as part of our ticket was to see some of we had entry to some of these things based on the ticket we bought. And all of a sudden I get a text from our friends. And they're like, you know what? We're kind of done. We just want to go back to the ship. So like my family, like we're trying to figure out like, all right, what are we going to do? Do we want to keep going? And then the kids are like, no, we want to go back to the ship. So literally, we got off the ship, we took a taxi, went over, looked at the cathedral, and then everybody's like, nah, we kind of want to go get lunch back on the ship. So we went back to the ship. So the cruise is starting off with a bang with these ports. I'll say Mallorca is gorgeous. I think at some point I would love to get back and explore a little bit more. I learned later I'm a tennis guy, so Rafa Nadal is from there, and he's got like a tennis academy where there's like all kinds of like a museum of his things and stuff like that. So I think next time I go back to Mallorca, I think I'd like to do something like that. There's a really cool village but here's where it gets to. Like I have a tolerance on port excursions. I can't take a 2-hour bus someplace. Like I'm not outside of Rome. Like I wanted to go to Florence when we were in La Spezia, but it's like you eat up half your day just trying to get to and from there. So we were looking for things that were closer. So this village thing was a little bit further away, and I was like, I really only wanted a half-day excursion anyway. So we wound up being back on the ship pretty close to when we'd anticipated in the first place. So we kind of took that day kind of just still a chill out day.
And I really think people need to not underestimate one's capabilities in Europe. I feel like a lot of people can't go all the time. And if you've already been on 15 days of running around or 10 days of running around Europe, you're going to get tired. And so poor Mallorca.
Not everybody's the crazies.
Exactly. Walking from the airport with your carry-on luggage.
We get back to the ship. We have a day at sea next, and then your next port day is La Spezia.
Yep. So La Spezia, so that was our Pisa day. So this was another one that we I'll call this a hybrid day, planning on our own versus the royal excursion. So we did take a royal excursion. It was, I can't remember the name of it, but it was basically, might have been Pisa on your own or something like that, where they would basically take you and then you get to kind of what do they call it, like the Square of Miracles or something like that, where the Leaning Tower is. And then there's a bit of baptistry and again, another cathedral, because there's always a cathedral in these places. And I was trying to hedge bets because they actually moved our excursion up an hour because they were trying to give us more time in the port, because that was the same day that they were doing the special on land, royal takeover kind of day. So they were trying to give us more time and stuff there. So they moved our excursion up an hour. And we really wanted to go see the Tower of Pisa. That was kind of the big thing that we wanted to go see, because if we're going to go to Florence, then we'll go to Pisa and see the tower. And as I started looking at their website, turns out I had no idea you could even climb the thing. So you can get tickets to climb, but it's timed, right? So you've got to be there at a certain time. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, the excursion says it's going to meet at this time, and it's like I'm looking at Google Maps. Okay, it's going to take this long to get from the port over to. So what time do I need to make sure that our tickets are at? Because it says you're going to get this long in the to basically explore, which was not a lot. We had like an hour and 15 minutes there. In hindsight, I probably would have wished I'd done it like 15 minutes earlier, but we were able to basically get in there. They didn't allow you to take bags up there, so we had to go through, and it's a free bag check for lockers and stuff like that. But I'm glad we actually got in line early, because they're like, no, 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 you're not. It's not your time yet. Come back at whatever, and you need to go check that bag. So like if we would have gotten in line and then found that out at that point, I don't know that we would have had time to go get the bag, get back, and then get up the tower. The ticket says you could take bags. They don't allow you to take bags. So that was a really interesting thing to learn very last minute, but I'm glad we had the time to be able to do it. But getting up there is a super cool vantage point. You do feel like you're a little bit like this way. Very tight getting up those stairs. There's a lot of like 260 something stairs to get up there, but it was really cool to get up there and take a little family selfie, and a lot of fun.
Did you take the pictures on the lawn holding up the tower?
Of course. It was hilarious. I saw a TikTok or an Instagram video or something like that about like, it's just like you're in Pisa or something like that, and it shows like literally like hundreds of people all doing the hands thing, trying to hold it up, and that's exactly what it's like. Everybody's there doing it. That's the team.
Let's talk about this Royal Day at, what was it, Lerici? How do you say that?
Lerici, yep. So it was super easy to get to. So we got back to the ship and got something to eat, and then the kids decided they didn't want to go. So my wife and I just kind of got off and went and did it. So we went, and there's right in back of where the ship was docked, there were little sort of ferry boats that were like taking you over to Lerici. So it was probably like a 20-minute ferry ride or so to get over there. Really cool. Kind of took you past like some Italian like naval vessels and stuff like that were docked there. But a cute little seaside town, Lerici. You pull up there, and then you got off, and it looked like the Ren Fair, where there's like all these people with their fancy costumes, and like some were like walking around on stilts and banging on drums, and it was like a big party atmosphere. Over to the left, they had like kind of like a lot of food tents, so complimentary included. Prosecco and beer and wine and stuff like that was all there, with some like little bruschetta and focaccia bread and stuff like that for Italian eats and stuff like that. Further down, there was a stage, and Michael Bailey was there, like with the mayor of Lerici, and doing the ceremonial changing of plaques and all that sort of stuff. Further down the other way, they had a stage where they had like a performer that was there, like singing opera and things like that. I'll say, like, we were there, we only stayed like an hour, because we kind of like walked up and down the beach, and I was kind of like, you know what, this is nice to see. Took a few pictures, but there isn't any, like, we're not here. I don't know. There wasn't anything that really kept us there. It was nice to go see, but it wasn't anything that I thought was so amazing that was going to keep me there for hours. Like, you look at the videos like that were online from the beach club takeover that they did the year before in, I can't remember, like Costa Maya or something like that. And it looked at like amazing, right? But maybe not quite. It was more of a party scene that I'm kind of there for. It looked like people were there kind of like all day hanging out at the beach at this beach club. This wasn't that. The weather wasn't great too. It was kind of drizzling a little bit. So I think maybe that played into it.
It's a Europe port. There's so much to see and do. And so it's taking time away from those other activities.
Yeah.
So I feel like that could be a reason.
Yeah. They didn't even start it until like 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon or something like that was when they actually started all that. And then it kind of went until like 8. So it was only really a half day thing that they had all that.
How long were you in port till?
I think we were in port most days until 8:30.
Oh, that's awesome.
Something like that. So, which is another thing, right? With when you start making dining reservations, trying to figure out like when are you going to eat, and we got a dining package, but it was a 3-night dining package, just because we kind of learned the last time that number one, main dining's fine for us most of the time, but like some nights I just want to go eat at the sports bar and just chill. So like we don't want to make a big deal out of night. We'll go grab the hot dogs on the boardwalk, or we'll go eat chicken wings at the sports bar or something like that. Like, I don't want to have a big sit down meal every night. So I think actually like our second formal night or something like that, we wound up actually like, I was like, no one's feeling like getting dressed up. We're all going to eat chicken wings at the sports bar.
Do you use the dining package for chicken wings?
No, that was after we'd already spent our dining stuff. We did the Italian place, the Giovanni's Table for one of them. We did the Central Park 150 or Park Central 150 or whatever it is, and then we did the hibachi the one night.
Well, moving on our ports, our next day is Civitavecchia, which is going to be our gateway to Rome. What did we have planned for this day?
So again, I keep planning all these things on my own, and this was a bit of a miss, I think. And I don't know if it was, I'll take you through the day, right? So we had booked a private driver to take us because we were thinking, hey, this is the best way to see Rome. They'll take us to places that they don't know, and they know kind of the easiest way to get around and get in. And I messaged with the tour company. There was a place that we worked through, and I said, all right, we're going to book, because it basically said we can book the tickets for you for the Colosseum and Vatican if you want us to, or you can book them on your own. So I booked them on our own. I said, okay, if you're telling me like what time do you think I should get these things at? So they're like, okay, I said, if we're going to have them pick us up at 8, what time do you think I should get the Colosseum and the Vatican? They're like, we'll get the Colosseum around 9 and then get the Vatican around noon. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm looking at the map. I'm like, there's no way they pick us up at 8 that we're going to make it to the Colosseum by 9. So we hedged our bets and moved that back an hour. And we said, all right, let's give ourselves some time here. And honestly, the Colosseum was a mess. Like I want to go back to Rome so badly. I will never go back in the summertime ever again. It was so oppressively crowded in the Colosseum.
Crowded and hot.
It was, the heat was one thing. I'll say the crowds to me were just, it's not workable. Like I was to a point where it's almost like, imagine leaving a concert, right? And everyone's crowding into the concourse to get out, and they're trying to get out the doors, right? It was like that everywhere in the Colosseum, where you get up to the second level where all the exhibits and stuff were. And I'm trying to like reach my arm in to take a picture of the exhibit and be like, I'll read that later. Like I couldn't get anywhere near some of these things that were there. So that to me was kind of a miss. And then I'll say it wasn't as bad at the Vatican, but it was similar crowds where it was just they kind of kept, like, we didn't have a lot of time there either, because but at that point we were now to 1:00. Our tour was like a 9-hour Rome kind of on your own thing. So they picked us up at 8, so we had to be back there by 5. So which means the driver's like, all right, well, we need to get going at like, I think it's like 3:00 or 3:30 or something like that. So by the time we got there and got into the Vatican and actually started seeing the things that we wanted to see, it was basically just racing to get to the Sistine Chapel and then out of there. So kind of what I've learned is, I think the next time we do Rome, we will cruise out of Rome and we will go for 3 to 4 days there, and we will do these things one at a time and be like, this is our Colosseum and Forum day. Because we're so tired of being in the Colosseum with the crowds. We're like, well, let's just go walk over to the Forum. Our driver won't be here for another 30 minutes. And it's right back there. The line to get into the Forum, we couldn't even get into the Forum. So it was kind of a bust for me on that. And as a kid who grew up taking Latin and desperately wanted to get to Italy someday, that there's some regrets on that a little bit. So I hope there will be another time, because I desperately want to see these things, but I won't go back in the summer. That's for sure.
One thought I had is you were talking about your 9 hours. In my opinion, what I would do to maximize your time is take the train, which you're capable of doing. You've already taken trains in big cities. Take the train from the port to Rome, and then, which is a little bit crowded and it's a little bit crazy, but it's totally doable. And then have your 9 hours start in Rome. And then you'd have more time and you can see more.
Great idea.
And do more things, because even if you took the Royal bus, which I would take a train over a bus almost any day, those are the 2 ways you could do it, where you could do Rome on your own on the Royal bus, have the driver meet you in Rome.
That's a great idea. The only thing that I would run up against would maybe the 13 hours or whatever we had in port. So we didn't want to get back too late either. I'd still probably see more. Yeah. Because to your point, like with that 9-hour tour, we chewed up a third of that just in transportation back and forth to and from the port, right? So then you got 6 hours. You got to eat in there somewhere too. Which this is the great
which
part
you
about
better
the private
eat
driver.
in Rome.
Yeah.
Because that's like the best feature.
So the private driver like knew to like where to take us to his favorite gelato place and his favorite little pizza place and stuff like that. He knew like the stuff to take us to, which was really great for having a local to know kind of how to show you those things. So there were some good bits with it too. So I don't want to downplay the whole thing, but just as far as being able to see a lot, you got to realize that if you're going to try and split your day into those doing this and that, you're not going to get to see much of either this or that. And again, same thing that I had when we were in London. When you try to split your days like that, sometimes you're just going to miss out on some things.
Yeah, I think when we talk about a Mediterranean cruise, I think everyone's first thing they think of is going to be Rome almost all the time. Unfortunately, the realities of cruising to Rome, especially if you are not embarking or disembarking there, is you got two options. You've got a taste of Rome, or you are missing out on everything but one thing. That's just the reality of what you'll be doing in Rome between the travel and as everything we just went through here.
Yeah, like I said, I think next time we would cruise out of Rome to see more of those things. But then ideally, like that would probably be a thing that would go hit Greece, right? And I'd probably wind up with the same thing in Athens that we did in. So I'd love to find a cruise that actually like starts in Rome, finishes in Athens, and then I fly home from there if I could draw one up.
Steve has a really good episode where his family did like a couple days in Rome before a cruise, and they talked about everything they did. I'll try to find that episode while we're chatting. But why don't we go ahead and move on from Rome to another very popular port, one of my favorite ports for sure, Naples.
Yeah, so Naples, we had a Royal Caribbean excursion book. This is one I didn't do on my own, mostly because I'm thinking, all right, well, if I miss this ship, the ship in this port, I just got to fly home because at this point, this is our last port.
Right.
So didn't really want to do that. So we wound up booking through Royal Caribbean, and it was another this and that kind of day where it was a day where they took us to Amalfi. So an Amalfi Coast kind of tour, like a boat tour, and then into the city, and then up to Pompeii, which was, to me, that was like the shining thing that I had to do this trip, was that I have always wanted to get to Pompeii. Like I mentioned, that I took Latin in high school. We read like the 3 years of reading about this family that was in Pompeii and stuff like that. And it's the Latin club when I was there, went to Italy, but I didn't get to go. And so, yeah, it was, I always wanted to get there. So that was the big thing for me. So Amalfi was the unexpected gem of this trip. Absolutely breathtaking. And I think I'd say that like everybody in our family like didn't really know what to expect kind of the Amalfi Coast. It was kind of like, all right, we're really here for Pompeii, but we'll go do this Amalfi thing too. Gorgeous. Like I would go and spend days on the Amalfi Coast if I could. My son and I, going up and down the little cobblestone streets and stuff like that, eating lemon sorbet out of an actual lemon. Just amazing. So we only had like an hour or two there, but it was such just a great little immersive town and breathtakingly beautiful with the homes on the cliffs and stuff like that. Totally would go back to like as I start like looking into like Positano and some of the other cities that are along there.
This is the second show that we've recorded where someone basically like stumbled upon the Amalfi Coast and has like rated it as their favorite thing of the trip. So just something to note there, definitely on Katie and I's radar.
Yeah, I honestly had no idea going into it, like what to expect. And like I said, it's breathtakingly beautiful. Like you think about like the seaside town thing that we were supposed to get kind of in Lerici, and it was like it had some of that stuff. This was the sort of like quintessential Italy for me of what you would expect to see and stuff like that. So then after Amalfi, we took a short bus ride over to Pompeii, and another one where I wish we'd had more time, but I'll also say that we were there maybe like an hour and 15 minutes. We did have a guide that kind of took us through and showed us certain things. And while I kept wandering up and down these amazing streets, looking up these alleys and stuff like that, like wondering what's over there? I want to go there. The reality is we were on our third port day in a row, and these are long port days. And I don't know whether anybody had more than that hour in them, to be totally honest with you. So this is another one where someday I will go back and I will have a guide that'll take me there all day long, and I'll just be gleeful and amazed to be able to see all the things. But it wasn't to be that day. But it was really, really cool for me. That was definitely something that I had really looked forward to for a long, long time. And just to be there was amazing for me.
Isn't it incredible how they preserved all of that? The whole town.
It's amazing. Like you're walking up and down these streets and you're like, this is exactly what I mean, without the roofs and stuff like that, obviously, because those all caved in when with the ash. But it's so incredibly preserved.
Any of those rooms right? You had to like duck because they're all like Christy sized. Yeah, like every door is Christy sized. It's fantastic.
They're pretty small, but it's amazing. Like you said, like you were literally in a city. And you could like they're like, oh well, this was like the McDonald's of the town, and they had like
And
the
then the
little kitchen with the
bathhouse.
countertop and all those things. Just amazing. And they're still uncovering more. Like there's still more that they haven't uncovered. They'll be doing this for like another century.
Well, it sounds like your last port adventure and stop was perfect for you with your desire to make it to this location that you learned about in school. And then you have a sea day and your cruise is over.
Yeah, the sea day was action packed though. That was the kind of the Royal throwback day or whatever it was. The Royal goes retro, and then that was the day that we got to go see Culture Club. So there was a lot of activities going on. I'll say that we spent it very lazy like because we'd earned it after those 3 days. We spent a lot of time in the solarium. I think at that point we were on like day 16 of our trip too, and I think we'd all. I think at that point you're starting to come down a little bit. I think the kids were like, you know what, it's been a great trip. We're ready to go home. So I think my son was just like chilled out in the room most of the day. You know, we went and got some ice cream together and lunch and just trying to get him out and doing some things. But I think at that point we were all just like, all right, it's been great. We are now out of money. It is time to go home.
Question. Royal Caribbean has a lot of packages you can purchase before the cruise. Dining, you already mentioned, and you can just stick with the included dining, of which there's plenty. But what about, did you purchase any of the drink packages, of which there are many iterations of, and then also the internet package?
We did both. Yeah. So it wound up being, I want to say the internet package after we bought them all. And I'll say the tip on this is you want to buy a one person multiple device package is the cheapest way to do it. So basically you have like sort of one login, and then like each of our 4 phones basically is able to access it whatever time, right? Versus trying to buy like I think our friends accidentally booked like 1 or 2 devices in one room and 2 devices in the other room. I think they wound up paying more for it than they needed to. So with how Royal does it, it doesn't matter like who's on the devices. It just matters that you have 4 devices. So you want to book it one person with I think it's up to 4 devices that you can get on there. So we did do that. I'll say it was more expensive than it used to be back when they used to have multiple tiers of packages. Because I think last time we just got like whatever the basic surf package was, and it was pretty affordable. This time around, it was like wound up being like $10 per person per day, which when you've got teens is well worth I mean, with them trying to keep in touch with friends and everything else and feeling so disconnected from everybody at home, it was fine. And then we did buy drink packages for our room as well as the kids' room. I think for us, probably a watt. I mean, by the time you factor in waters and specialty coffees and alcoholic drinks and stuff like that, it was probably a wash for us somewhere in there, at least spitting distance, if you will. With the kids, because we bought them the refreshment package, because they don't really drink soda, right? And I was like, all right, let's get them the refreshment package, which includes mocktails and things like that. Just fresh squeezed juices and whatever else they want to get.
Those fresh squeezed juices are delicious.
They're quite good. But I'll say they didn't come close to using that. Like they just, for the most part, they drink water, right? And then whether you could or should do this, you can literally walk up to any bar. If you get the drink package, like I'd walk up to any bar and be like, hey, can I get 4 waters? And like I'd walk away with 4 waters and we start loading up our fridge, right? So that's what they drank most of the time.
Right.
So like, and they weren't going to the bar to get the waters. Like it's my wife and I going and fetching all this water all the time. But every time we'd go, get a drink, we'd be like, hey, can I get 2 waters? Right. And then you just walk away with them.
That works. I will say too, for families, if you have younger kids and there's less need to be on an internet package, a lot of times we would buy one internet device and then just log in and log out. So mostly me being online, Dave would do the shoulder hours sometimes after he'd wake up and then after I'm asleep, and then, Blake doesn't need it yet, so it didn't matter. Yeah, so there is a way to maximize internet package that way, but good advice to do the multiple packages or the multiple devices under one account.
Yeah, they didn't do any of the teen clubs this time around. So I think they may have walked in once, but they didn't really do anything in there. I think it looks really nice as far as the online stuff goes, because it's kind of like a teen hangout kind of thing. But yeah, it was overall like we tried to relax when we could relax, because a lot of it is go, go, go. Like I mentioned, my people don't do great when they were rescheduled, but they hung in there for most of it. And this was an amazing trip just for us as a family to experience this together. It's something we've been thinking about for a long time, and it lived up to all of that.
Hey.
Well, sounds like just an absolutely wonderful trip for you and your family. But looking forwards, what's next for you?
1st is going to be marathon weekend. So we will see you guys on the Dopey course. So my wife and I are both training for that. So that's occupying a lot of our time right now. And then I've got a milestone birthday coming up next March, and we're going to do the Dream out of Fort Lauderdale on a 5-night, would actually wound up being a Marble Day at Sea, which is right in my wheelhouse. And it's going to hit both private islands. So it's going to be an awesome trip to spend my 50th birthday.
Oh, that's great.
Love a Marble Day at Sea, and especially love Dopey. We will see you out there on the course for 4 very early mornings and lots of miles.
Well, if you want to see me on the course, you're going to have to slow way down, Lake.
Yeah, Lake.
I'm sorry. I will be holding the finish line beer at the end for everyone.
Very good.
That is my role.
7 hours later, here comes Christy.
It's close to true.
I'm so much slower than my first marathon, but whatever. It is what it is.
This is not a race for time for me. I'm going to go and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to take pictures and I'm going to ride Everest if it's available to me. And I'm going to do all the things.
It is a very fun marathon to do at any pace. But I did just want to touch back. I did mention Steve's Mediterranean trip and sailing. Christy, can you guess whereabouts this episode was?
No.
Episode 52.
Stop it.
I was thinking it was like, 100, 130, 200, 52.
Wow.
And it feels like I can still remember that episode. Chad, thank you so much for coming on and sharing you and your family's adventure through the Mediterranean. Sounds like just an absolutely wonderful trip.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Your support of the podcast through all these years. So we appreciate that.
Happy to help.
Absolutely. Well, Christy, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show. Once again, we want to thank Chad for coming on and sharing his family's experience cruising on Royal Caribbean's Oasis, the seas through the Med. If you're enjoying the show, we greatly appreciate you leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We'd also like to thank our Patreons who help make this show happen each and every week for us. You too can help support the show by joining our community by visiting patreon.com/DCL Podcast. Whether you're boarding a cruise, enjoying a trip to the parks, or adventuring outside of Disney, on behalf of myself, Christy, and Steve, we want to wish you smooth sailing and safe travels. And we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.
The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.